Spider-Man Far From Home is a stone's throw away to arriving in our cinemas and signaling the end of Marvel's Phase 3.
You gonna be the next Iron Man now?
Well, no, I don't have time. I'm too busy doing your job.
It's also the final film in the 5-picture deal that Marvel and Sony agreed to do for the loan of Spider-Man. This has opened up rumors that Spider-Man may be brought in permanently by Marvel, and if so, Venom won't be far behind.
We are Venom.
So let's get cracking on how Venom may jump into the MCU. Before the Marvel fans were put through an emotional roller coaster from Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, 2015 was a landmark year for the MCU. Back then, it was announced to the world that Marvel and Sony had struck a deal. This deal gave Marvel, who are owned by Disney, the ability to share the film rights to use Spider-Man. However, they wouldn't have the box office profits from any Spider-Man solo films. Marvel just had the creative control instead, meaning they're responsible for casting, crew, the story, and other elements. Even if Marvel aren't making any box office money, they've made a ton from the merchandising alone. The deal didn't include all of the Spider-Man characters, only old Peter Parker himself and a select few side pieces. Aunt May, MJ, and good old Ned. Regardless, the MCU fans rejoiced at this news. Spider-Man is with the Avengers. The deal did have a limitation, however. Marvel wouldn't permanently get Spider-Man back for their films. Instead, the deal agreed was for Spider-Man to appear in 6 films, 3 co-starring Assemble films and 3 solo films. The first of which was in Captain America Civil War.
You're the Spiderling, crime-fighting spider. You're Spider-Boy?
While the deal has never been officially reported to the public, it initially included 5 movies, but interviews with actors like Tom Holland may have revealed the extra 3rd solo movie as part of the deal. Now that the original deal is almost finished, there's a lot of speculation on what the future of the MCU, Sony, and Spider-Man will hold. But ScreenRant, how did Sony get the film rights anyway, we hear you ask? Well, we'll briefly explain it for you now, dear viewers. Back in the late 90s, the comic industry was in a bad state. So much so that Marvel sold off their film rights to stay afloat and avoid bankruptcy. Hence why Fox had the X-Men and Fantastic Four, until recently that is. Anyway, Sony picked up the film rights to Spider-Man and the related cast of characters. It didn't take them long to get the most out of those rights by releasing the Spider-Man film in 2002.
We'll meet again, Spider-Man!
After temporarily giving the film rights back to Marvel, Sony couldn't use Spider-Man anymore, so they had to get creative. They wanted to create their own version of the MCU, the Sony Marvel Universe. Sony used the spider-related characters they still had the rights to and set in motion creating their plan. The first film we got out of it was Venom. 2018 saw the beginning of Sony's plan come to fruition as Venom was released. The film was bashed left and right by critics on its release. However, fans loved it. The film made $855 million worldwide. The fans particularly loved the adorable and occasionally weird relationship between Eddie Brock and Venom.
Now, let's bite all the heads off and pile them up in the corner.
Why would we do that?
As Venom did well financially, Sony got the ball rolling on their other Spider-Man-related films. Next year, we're expecting a Morbius film starring Jared Leto to be released. Morbius is a scientist that accidentally turns himself into a vampire. The comics and animated TV shows were the only places to see Spider-Man and Venom fight it out before. Well, okay, not technically. We do have the Sam Raimi film, Spider-Man 3 from 2007. Most of the time, we try to pretend like that didn't happen. The least said about the Parker-Venom shuffle, the better. Anyway, Marvel and Sony have the option to do the Spider and Alien battle properly this time. At least, this is what the fans are begging for. Especially with the reception of the Venom film and Tom Holland nailing his portrayal of Peter Parker. With Spider-Man's MCU deal coming to an end soon, there's a few possibilities for Marvel and Sony for the future. For starters, Marvel and Sony could renegotiate another similar deal. For a set amount of films, Spider-Man can remain within the MCU. As the last deal hasn't hit any major problems, this will probably be the most likely action. However, the cost to rent Spider-Man again will increase due to the popularity of the brand thanks to the MCU. The second option would be for Disney to purchase the Spider-Man film rights back. It would likely cost a lot of money for this to happen. At the moment, while Sony are funding the films, they are making an obscene amount of cash for Marvel's work. Marvel would also have to take into consideration if the other Spider-Man characters would also be purchased back. And if so, the deal will get even more expensive. But fans would love to see Venom and Spider-Man clash in the MCU. The final option is for Spider-Man to move into the Sony Marvel Universe and away from Marvel. A lot of fans would be sad to see this happen. Spider-Man has created a great narrative within the MCU.
You're an Avenger now.
It'd be a shame to have it go to waste. But if no deal is struck, it's a possibility. As mentioned earlier, the next MCU film that Spider-Man will appear in is Far From Home. In this film, as shown from the trailer, alternate dimensions are going to play a role.
I'm sorry, you're saying there's a multiverse?
This remark has sparked rumor fires that the arrival of Venom into the MCU is imminent. The MCU could easily bring the Venomverse into their continuity. Simply have Peter Parker pop over to Eddie Brock through a dimensional portal, find out who he is, and drag him over into the MCU to save the day. Before we know it, the two Toms will be swinging around New York together. But it also works both ways. If a deal isn't struck by the end of the third solo movie, we could see Tom Holland's Peter Parker go into the Venomverse to help save that dimension, only for him to be stuck there permanently. Which would be sad for the MCU, but great for Sony. There's also the possibility that alternate dimensions don't need to come into play. If the MCU secures the rights to Venom along with Spider-Man, there's potential that Venom is already in the MCU. For example, the Venom film is set in and around the area of San Francisco, which is far away from the hero-heavy population of the MCU's favorite New York, meaning Venom and the MCU may not have crossed paths simply due to geography. Although both Ant-Man films are mostly set in or around San Francisco. But luckily that's just one, maybe two Avengers. It wouldn't be too tricky to explain why their paths never collided. To explain why he's in San Francisco, Eddie mentions in the film that he's left New York because of some kind of scandal. There is a slight knock against this theory. In the Venom film, Eddie is surprised to learn that the symbiote is of an alien origin. In the MCU, everyone knows about aliens being around due to the events of the first Avengers film when the Chitauri attacked New York. A big alien invasion like that would be hard to miss, especially as we saw in Homecoming, the huge amount of destruction the invasion left behind. And Eddie Brock would be a terrible journalist to not know about an event like that. But what if Venom was set before the Chitauri invasion? Well, that would make Eddie's reaction understandable. The invasion just hasn't happened yet, thus putting the potential for a Tom vs. Tom battle back on. Speaking of Venom being set before 2012, let's talk about Captain America. At the end of Avengers Endgame, Steve Rogers went back in time to return each of the Infinity Gems that they had taken during the time heist. He then stayed in the past to be with his previously lost love, Peggy Carter. So Steve Rogers would have seen a lot in those years that the other Avengers weren't privy to. One of those events that Rogers could see might involve a scary black alien in San Francisco prior to the Chitauri wreaking havoc in New York. With everything that's gone down in the MCU since then, Venom might have slipped under S.H.I.E.L.D.'s radar. Or Hydra hid the info from S.H.I.E.L.D. when they infiltrated the agency. On top of that, we saw how much power Carlton Drake has in Venom. Even with his demise, his company would still hold a lot of sway to hide the events of Venom from people. But with Rogers around, he would obviously find out the truth about Venom and the symbiotes. Old Man Rogers could then make the trip to see Venom and see what all the fuss is about. The Venom film even included a reference to a key Spider-Man character. Near the start of the film, the Life Foundation's space rocket crashes on Earth. One of the astronauts is identified as Jameson.
That's Jameson.
The name may ring a bell for Spider fans.
I want Spider-Man!
However, the reference isn't of the angry Spider-Man photo-demanding J. Jonah Jameson exactly, but instead it's about his son. In the comics, John Jameson was an astronaut that came into a problem as his rocket re-entered the Earth's atmosphere. Luckily, Spider-Man was there to save John. This is either a reference to the shared universe that Venom and Spider-Man are in, or just a fun Easter egg. But let's say that Venom doesn't exist in the MCU in any capacity. Sony and Marvel's worlds are completely separate. Now, imagine Marvel buys the film rights to the character and want to add him into the MCU. Well, we're gonna go over some ways that this could happen. In Avengers Endgame, one of the characters to get a major power boost was the Scarlet Witch. She easily flung Thanos around the battlefield, so with her boosted reality warping powers, anything is possible. Mostly, this boost has got the rumor mill churning on how she can add the X-Men and Fantastic Four into the MCU. But her powers could lead to Venom jumping in with the former Fox film properties. Now that Marvel is expanding further on the cosmic side, perhaps they may stumble across the home planet where Venom came from. We have the Eternals that could add that into their film. Or in the third Guardians of the Galaxy film, they may find it on a voyage. This would likely mean rebooting Venom rather than bringing the current iteration from Sony, which would mean no Tom Hardy. Sorry guys. In the comics, Flash Thompson is one of the most popular characters to bond with Venom. When the Army veteran did, he became Agent Venom. Flash turned the broken Venom symbiote into a hero. Guess which character has already been in Homecoming and will be in Far From Home? That's right, Flash Thompson. He's currently being portrayed by Tony Revolori. This would provide the Spider-Verse an opportunity to bring Agent Venom into the MCU. The opportunity is there for the MCU and Sony's Marvel Universe to partner up. It would give the surprise audience hit Venom a chance to shine in the MCU. Spider-Man Far From Home is the best chance to add Tom Hardy's Venom into the MCU. With alternate dimensions being introduced, it'll be rather easy to slide Venom alongside or opposite the Avengers. So, would you want Venom to appear in the MCU? Or would you like Spider-Man to move into Sony's Marvel Universe? Drop your thoughts into the comment section down below. Remember to subscribe to keep up to date on ScreenRant's Spider-Terrific content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.